Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. Technically, this episode is for December 24th, 2024, Christmas Eve. Although I have been a little behind getting these episodes out because of the holiday season. Okay, that's an excuse. This is stand-up comedian, actor, improviser, and dreamer, Paul Green. And this is episode 362 of the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. We have 4 episodes left of my 365 daily episode goal of the Paul Green Comedy Podcast, where mostly I just kind of talk about myself and just discuss what life is like as a stand-up comedian and as a performer, trying to be successful, trying to go for dreams, trying to hone the craft as a comedian, manage the creative side with the business side, and just hoping that as I navigate this, that perhaps something I say might be of benefit to anybody else out there pursuing their dreams and navigating all the struggles, the ups, the downs, the setbacks, the discouragements, as well as the victories and the excitement and the challenges and the opportunities, the experiences. That's all wrapped up into it. And I sure as heck don't got it figured out. So I am just reporting back in real time what I'm experiencing as I move through all of this. So I am sort of in a bit of a lull, a good lull, in terms of shows. I don't even really know when my next show is scheduled. I don't have any stand-up shows on the books until, gosh, probably mid-January, I think. Yeah, I don't think I got anything else on the calendar. Now, I'm sure once the new year hits, I'll start, hustling and sending out some emails to bookers and clubs and, So, yeah, I've just been in a place of reflection and just sort of relaxing at the end of this year, because it has been quite a fascinating year with just a lot of changes, a lot of experiences, a lot of just a lot of new experiences and opportunities, which I didn't even have on my radar when the year started. It's just so bizarre to think that at the start of this year, I didn't even really have any sort of close relationship with who has now become my comedy partner, Josh and Ovi. So I had met Josh at a show like a couple years previous. We had like ran into each other. I think we went to lunch when I moved back to Arizona, and which I thought was really cool that he invited me to lunch. We had a great conversation, and then that was kind of that. And then about a year and a half later, I start doing this podcast, and I decided to have him on as a guest, which is pretty rare. I've only had a handful of guests on the show, and it was when he came over, we just had a great conversation. It was so much fun. And it was in that meeting that we realized I didn't know he was a musician as well and that he had an improvisational background. So after we recorded the podcast episode, we went downstairs and I have a piano and a guitar. And we were just kind of talking. And then I sat down at the piano and he grabbed the guitar and we just sort of started jamming a little bit. And just kind of riffing on a little song and didn't really think much of it. And then like 2 weeks later, he calls me up and says, I just had an inspiration. We need to do a podcast together. It's going to be called the Let's Have a Midlife Crisis podcast. And honestly, my first thought when he said that was, well, I already do a daily podcast that almost nobody listens to. Why would I go start another podcast that almost nobody's going to listen to? It's like so much work to create a podcast, to put content out there, and the probability that your podcast is actually going to float to the top and get any sort of visibility sufficient enough to actually, produce any sort of real results, either financially or through exposure, is just, gosh. But I just said, you want to know what? This is a comedian who I respect, and he wants to do a thing, and why the heck not? So, scheduled a time. I went to his house. He had a piano set up, a couple microphones, all the cameras, and then we had no plan. We had no format. We had nothing. We just sat down and just kind of organically got in this conversation. And then in the middle of the conversation between he and I, again, he set up a piano for me and I just started playing the piano and we just improvised a song on the spot about whatever it was we were talking about. And it was really fun. So we filmed a handful of episodes, maybe 4 or 5 of those. And then it was shortly after that where the owner and booker of JP's Comedy Club came to me and just said, hey, if you want to produce a live show here, let us know. We'd love to support you. And I just thought, hey, you want to know what? I think this podcast would actually be better live. And if instead of Josh and I just singing about each other, if we sang about audience members, just brought audience members on stage and just had a spontaneous interview with them and improvised songs. And that's how that all happened. And now we're probably a good 12 shows in to the Midlife Crisis Comedy Show. And we've had some great experiences. We performed just this last Saturday in front of the biggest audience that he and I have had together as the Midlife Crisis Comedy Show. We got about 275, 280, somewhere around there. People who bought tickets and came out to the show. And gosh, this whole thing didn't even exist a year ago. So, I think one of the great opportunities and challenges of life is the balance between trying to plan everything out and control everything, and the flip side of that, which is to just move forward in faith. Sure, make decisions, make plans. But that's why I'm saying it's a balance, because you always want to have a plan. You always want to be working towards something. But then there's a flip side of that, which is being open to spontaneity and creativity and being open to what comes your way, and being open to what opportunities come that may not seem like it's part of the plan, but in those instances, it's like, okay, just to trust your instinct, and to say yes to something. And I just look back at Josh asking me to do a podcast. I actually didn't want to do another podcast. It was just not something I had that much of, well, I had almost no interest in doing. And again, when he initially asked me to do a podcast, like my instinct, my gut reaction was to to just say no. Um, and well, I shouldn't say my gut reaction, because my gut was saying, no, go for it. But it was my brain, it was my intellect, it was my fear mechanism, it was my fight or flight mechanism, it was my survival mechanism, um, that was looking at it from a standpoint of, oh, that's going to be a lot of work, or, oh, that's not going to be successful. Like, it's really hard to be incredibly successful as a podcaster, right? It's like, there's like 10 of them that make all the money, right? It's like Joe Rogan makes all the money, and then everybody else makes nothing, right? And, but thankfully, I had enough sense to go, you want to know what? This is a stand-up comedian who's reached out to me, who's been very successful as a stand-up comedian. I respect his comedy, and he wants to collaborate with me, and he wants to do a thing. So say yes. Say yes. And now it's morphed and adjusted and changed. And funny thing is, now we're not even podcasting anymore. We've really moved on from the whole podcast element. And now it's just another opportunity to self-produce live shows, which was something that I was trying to figure out on my own, how to produce and actually be successful producing shows. And when I tried to just produce myself, I really got my ass handed to me, um, in a very spectacular manner. And so yeah, it was not very successful initially when I tried to produce shows of just me talking about myself. And so when I teamed up with Josh, though, it really made it um, something that um, was just more successful. And we were able to sell tickets and market our shows, and we were having really fun shows, and people seemed to buy into the concept. They loved the concept of what we were doing, which is very unique. We don't know anybody else in the world doing the type of show that we're doing. And it's just really been a blast. So, and that all just happened this year, just sort of out of the ether, out of the blue. And here we are at the end of the year, looking forward to the next year. And who knows what opportunities will emerge, but finding that balance, have your plans, have your goals, move forward with those plans, with those goals, but always be open for an audible, always be open for a little spontaneity, a little excitement, and that's what makes life fun, in my opinion. I mean, if you knew every single thing that was going to happen in every single moment, and everything was predictable, and you had to control every element of every aspect of your life, you know, just seems like that would make life just a little dull. It's nice to have a little bit of unknown, a little spontaneity, a little excitement just to sort of round out life a little bit, add a little fulfillment, add a little joy, add a little excitement. So, all right, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having an amazing holiday season. I know this is getting released on Christmas, but this is actually the episode for yesterday for Christmas Eve. So I will be putting out another episode talking about, Christmas or whatnot. And we're down to only 3 episodes left before I take a little break and then regroup on how to move forward with the Paul Green Comedy Podcast. But until then, I love you all so much. I thank you for listening. This is the Paul Green Comedy Podcast for December 24th, 2024, episode 362. I love you all so much. Merry Christmas. I'll talk to you tomorrow.